All right, let's move to the last question type of the listening section. We already did it all, inference questions. So the inference questions usually ask you about why did the professor say something, or what did the professor mean when he said something, right? Or sometimes they ask you to make some conclusions, like when is this discussion most likely taking place, or what do you think will happen after this discussion? So sometimes they ask you to make some conclusions about the setting of the discussion. So there are different types of inferences questions, but it's always your conclusion. It's always something that wasn't said in the listening section, but it's something that was obvious. So for you, it's very easy to make this conclusion. There's nothing like, oh, it can be anything. It's always obvious. This is a very obvious conclusion. So you need to make it because it's not something you heard. It's something you need to educatedly guess, right? Educatedly make a conclusion and choose a most likely answer. Okay. So let's look at this example. I'll read it for you and we'll discuss why did the professor say something. When the person at bat hits the baseball, the ball and bat accelerate in opposite directions. The ball bounces back with a rebound energy equals to that of the bat. Does my use of the term bounce in this case sound wrong to you? We say something bounces when it hits a stationary object. But is it correct to say bounces when one moving object hits another moving object? Okay, so if you heard this in the listening, maybe you're already able to predict what question you will have. Because you had a question during his speech. I mean, the professor does a pretty weird thing, right? He was just telling something boring, like he was talking about the lecture, and then all of a sudden he asks a question. It's a rhetorical question, right? He doesn't expect anyone to answer it right away. He just asks it out of a sudden, and then he actually asks another question, right? So he puts it so that the students kind of like get another dynamic from his lecture. They're not just all bored, there's some questions and they need to think about them, okay? So if there's just a normal direction of the lecture, it's all boring, it's all some material going on, and then something weird happens. I mean, not like really weird, but something different. So for example, we have a question, or we have a joke, or we have some idiom, then of course there will be a question about it, like what happened? Why did the professor say this? What did he apply when he said this? So now let's look at the answer choices. Here we have the question, what does the professor imply when he says this? And of course the question is repeated for us. Does my use of the term bounce in this case sound wrong to you? And we have 4 answer choices. She's concerned that the students may not understand baseball. She has made a mistake in her description and is correcting herself. She wants to focus the students' attention on a particular feature. She's concerned that the students will confuse bounce and rebound energy. What do you think is the right answer? The right answer is C. She wants to focus the students' attention on a particular feature. Some of these answer choices were just obviously wrong, right? Well, most of them. All of them. She's concerned that the students may not understand baseball. Of course, it's wrong. They're not really talking about the rules of the game, right? They were talking about physics. She has made a mistake in her description, is correcting herself. All right, this is pretty tricky because usually a professor is a hero. We know that. So it's very unlikely that a professor did a mistake. Well, sometimes, maybe in some very rare situation, there will be a mistake that the professor immediately corrects, but usually it's just within one sentence because our professor is a hero. He's not a human, he's a hero, okay? So this is a pretty unlikely answer choice. She has made a mistake, I'm not sure about it. She's concerned that students will confuse bounce and rebound energy. Maybe not such an obviously wrong answer, but of course wrong answer, because she's not concerned about it in this question, right? She's just asking if the bounce sounds wrong to students, so they need to think about, what does bounce mean? Is it a good word for this situation? What is the process of bouncing? So it doesn't have to do anything with the rebound energy. Okay, so this is how we do the inference question. So we always remember that the professor is a hero, and then we actually pay attention to something different that happens during the lecture so that we can predict this question. Okay, let's look at another example. Okay, now I would like to have you get into groups of 3 or 4. I'm going to pass out an assignment sheet, and I would like you to decide in your group how you're going to approach the problem set in the handout. I think the handout is self-explanatory, but if you have questions, I'd like you to work out a solution of your own. And now we have a question. It's a different question. It's not about why did the professor say something. It's just a question where we need to infer something about the professor. We have to make a conclusion after listening to what he said. So the answer choices are: he wants the students to make group decisions without his help. He does not expect the students to understand his explanation. He wants the students to come to the solution he thinks is correct. He's not concerned with helping students learn how to approach problems. So what do you think is the right answer? The right answer is the first one. He wants the students to make group decisions without his help. So he is giving them some freedom, right? He wants them to learn and try to think out a solution, and then of course they will discuss it after they already did some self-work. So here the right answer is A, and then the rest of the answer choices were pretty weird, right? They were obviously wrong. He does not expect the students to understand his explanations. Who is he? Like, is he a good professor if he doesn't expect his students to be smart? Like, what is it? He wants the students to come to the solution he thinks is correct. What? Why does he think something is correct? There are always a freedom of students to express themselves, right? So it's a pretty weird state. Like, he thinks is correct. Like, what does it mean he thinks is correct? Like, it's weird. He's not concerned with helping students learn how to approach problems. He's not concerned with helping students. That's horrible, right? That's not characteristic of a hero professor. And we know that all professors in Toefl are heroes. So, of course, these answer choices are somewhat weird, somewhat just putting a professor in a bad light, so we're not choosing those answers. So the answer choice is pretty obvious. He wants the students to make group decisions without his help. So these are the tips for doing your inference questions, but of course the practice will do everything for you. So you just need to practice a lot and then practice these tips that we just discussed, and then once you're practiced enough, then you will have all the inference questions nailed, and then it means just you covered all the other questions. You have just one main idea questions and then just a mixture of details and inferences. So you already nailed details, I hope so. So the inferences is the last thing you need to nail. Practice a lot and then you will cover the entire listening section. We made it. We're here. Just some exercises and we finished the listening section. Congratulations. So go on, take some exercises and let's go next to the listening wrap up. Thanks for watching.